In my early days, it was intimidating when I'd walk into the offices of executives and they had nothing on their desktop, and I thought I could be like them.
Do you know you have a nickname? Do you know what your nickname is?
Oh, yes. I don't know how that ever, who did that? I forgot that. It's been a lot of years. Okay, let's see if we can find in this mess what I'm looking for to show you. Hey, don't mess up my office.
I'll try not to.
Jeez, have some respect.
It's amazing how many things you have when you have things just stacked here.
The worldwide waxer, is it true?
Yes, it's very true.
Eddie, the worldwide waxer, yes, that is an accurate description.
He's traveled 170 nations of the world. No one has traveled as much as he did. So his footprints are everywhere.
He knows people in most countries of the world.
The way that he had to do it originally was get on a Pan Am jet and go, get world tickets and zoom around the world.
Different soccer balls with different, oh, here we go. Here we go. Here's what I have become, a stuffed animal. In the games for children and play, Waxy has been the name given to this character. Beautiful, huh?
This water bucket championship has spread and gone through the sports and games program worldwide. And Eddie stood up in a meeting and said, I think this is going to become an Olympic sport. And quite seriously.
And so we were trying to come up with official rules and regulations and how many people and how much water and how much time. And
it was a very funny moment, made even funnier by some of the much more serious sports leaders trying to work out how on earth do we shut this whole thing down, because this had got completely out of control.
And I was just sitting there thinking, this isn't going to work. Like, you can't do this.
And I've never been in a meeting in the sport movement where it looked like it was going to end up in a punch out over the World Water Bucket Championship.
And that's supposed to be you?
That's me, yep. That is, Waxy is me. That's how I finished my life, as a stuffed animal. It's very humorous. Oh well. In 1989, Pat and I were traveling in Spain, helping the local leadership, churches, and agencies prepare for the Olympic Games in Barcelona. And I've been looking for probably 20 years. How could sport be used to help the body of Christ, churches, work in partnership more? And I just could not find anything that fit that description. And I got a call from a friend who said, the only partnership time in our culture of churches working together is a children's sports event. And I'm thinking, a children's sports event? And so I arrived back in Spain, and here are 3,000 family members sitting in the stands. I looked at that and realized how simple the idea was. And I realized that's what I've been looking for nearly 20 years.
Simple and obvious often equals genius.
I never imagined that children would be the key to cooperation.
That one question then spun off, I think, the last 25 years of the sport movement. It meant that we had to do things open source, it meant that we had to give everything away, it meant that we had to structure things very flat, it meant that we had to think virally. There were so many elements that came out of that one question. And it created a whole next level of the sport movement that hadn't existed before.
Sports and Games for Kids, the first major pilot was in Egypt.
So he chose I would think, one of the hardest places to start it.
The fact that Eddie chose and the team chose to start in somewhere like Egypt, completely upside down. You don't start a big program in Egypt. You started in America, you started in Britain. But the point was that if you can make it work in Egypt, you can make it work anywhere.
When this happened in the most difficult circumstances, this opened up the vision for so many people around the world to dream dreams like this.
The goal was to have 400 churches and 10,000 kids involved.
They ended up with 40,000.
It was kind of the biggest thing in Egypt that year, which was amazing and was not at all what we were thinking would happen.
Egypt alone was a miracle because the church was not allowed meat outside the four walls of the church, and yet it was children and sport that then opened up.
It was very definitely proof that God is in this and that something's happening, something big.
Madagascar Stadium had like 160 or 180,000 kids in it. It was just mad.
And then Niger, they hosted the Francophone Games, and it would be the biggest sports event that Niger would ever host. Let's have games and sports for kids and teach all of the churches how to do that. And then have all of that lead directly into the Francophone Games, where we can go impact the Athletes Village and all of the people from around the French world, Francophone world, coming together. It seems so simple, but no one had ever done it.
When you reimagine sport and games for kids out of a stadium, it changes everything.
There was a moment when I was sitting at a table with Eddie and a number of the other sports leaders, and we were thinking about this new idea of a sports and games program for kids. And Eddie asked the question, how are we going to run this when it's in 10,000 cities all at once?
And everyone was thinking, man, that's crazy.
For me, that just blew my mind of going, it's not even in one city yet.
20 countries, 40 countries, 80, 90 countries, and within just a few short years, it was in over 100 countries.
And within, 5 or 6 years, 175 plus countries were running the games and sport program across the world.
So one of the leadership principles that Eddie has lived by is the concept of don't tell me an idea, just model it. If it's a good idea, show me it. And that was exactly what happened in the sports and games program.
In my life growing up, I learned fairly quickly that my parents didn't have a wonderful relationship. I was at a Detroit Tiger baseball game. I was 14 years old, and I was stunned to see that my father was a distance away from me with another woman. And that's the first time that I actually saw that. I knew something was wrong when he didn't come home on different nights during the week, but here was the reality of an extramarital situation. And I really didn't know how to handle that.
You look at Eddie and say, he probably had a great childhood. I was shocked to hear that he grew up in a very violent neighborhood. And his family was a broken family. I think he had one of the most contrary childhoods somebody could have.
Eddie had a rough childhood. One of the first places he was mentored and encouraged, unfortunately, wasn't in his house so much as at the Boys and Girls Clubs in Detroit.
When I had those feelings, seeing my father at that baseball game, I was very thankful that I had developed a friendship with somebody that worked at the Boys Club, who I could talk to and ask about that. He had training in social skills and was able to be a helpful listener and helped me through that time. I was aware through that experience of the pain that was inside of me. And that was a good really major first learning experience of the importance of relationships with other people. One of the more fun things that happened along the course of my leadership role was being asked to put together a 28-minute program of athletes speaking at the White House for President Gerald Ford in the East Room. We had 170 of the most well-known athletes from boxing, track and field, baseball, basketball, football, members of the cabinet, the president and his wife, and I said, wow, 28 minutes, I gotta, and I would call what eventually ended up being 9 high-profile sports persons, asking them to speak there at the White House. Who, me? In the White House? Yeah, you. And then it went to dismay when I told them, you have 90 seconds to tell your story. The White House Chief of Staff was not happy. 9 athletes are gonna finish in 28 minutes? The president has a schedule. We have to stick to the schedule. I said, don't worry about it. We will be done in 28 minutes. And that's exactly what we did. It was awesome. The whole room was galvanized, and we finished 15 seconds early.
Eddie always discipled us, mentored us to serve your friends. And we saw this with Ethan Jackson and with Paul, and obviously with Stan Smith.
So him and Ethan, I think people not knowing them would think that they are brothers. They are super close to each other, and they've been working. It's Jonathan and David.
Ethan Jackson was a very successful businessman who was on the board of Campus Crusade. We became friends through that back in the end of the 1960s. He loved to play tennis. I loved to play tennis. I would stay with Joyce and Ethan all the time, and we continued to play tennis. That continued for decades, even playing golf with each other. I can't remember exactly the first time we played tennis against each other, if it was at Arrowhead or what.
Arrowhead.
I think it was 1967.
67. That sounds about right.
And I can't remember what the score of that first match was. That was too long ago on the tennis court.
I think you were the first lefty I ever played against.
Oh my goodness, my big spin serve.
Yeah.
My pride and joy.
Your big kick.
Ethan was a college basketball player. He loved sport. This led to me going to one of the Bible agencies and saying, would you create the first ever sports New Testament? They said, we're willing to do it if you could find those who would provide the cost. And so I went to Ethan and Joyce, and they and their family provided 120,000 copies of the first ever sports New Testament. That today has spread to over 40 nations, having their own sports New Testament for individual sports, for major events, Winter Olympics, Summer Olympics, World Cups of rugby, cricket, and soccer.
Keep an eye on it. I don't want to lose this ball, Eddie.
Okay, I'm watching where you go. Ooh, ooh. What a way to start. I mean, that is the best drive you've ever hit.
I'll take it, I'll take it.
Golly days, you took a shortcut. He and I, our friendship, birthed all kinds of things in many different ways over these now well over 50 years. We've had a good day on the course.
Sure have.
I love you.
Love you too.
Another beautiful thing about Eddie is just I mean, it is his humility.
He says, I give Stan Smith 60% of the credit. I'll take 40. He gets 60.
Well, that would be an overstatement for sure. I think he's wrong, to be quite honest.
When people talk about Eddie and you don't know Eddie personally, you create this picture of a very influential man.
My assumption was Eddie's this big guy that, he does everything.
My view of a leader back at home was somebody who was always up in the front. Eddie seemed unapproachable, way over there.
The second you meet Eddie for the first time is like you know him for a long time already.
So when I first met Eddie, I was like, oh, that's strange. I was not expecting to see Eddie so simple, but he just walked up to me and he called my name. He said, hey, I'm Eddie. I was like, oh, okay, this is rare. This is not common.
I remember the first time he noticed me and he was disarming.
It was lunch and he just gradually came in and said, can I sit with you? And it was like, it's with myself and my Indian friend. And then he just sat with us and was talking.
So I met him first time in 2003 in Greece when we had a big conference. I was 100% sure that he would be sitting on the stage or, sitting on the first row. It was probably about 30, 40 rows of chairs and people were sitting down. And then I looked at every row and on the last row, in the last seat, in the corner seat, there was this man. And I couldn't just believe my eyes and my thoughts.
He is the best leader I've ever met, but he's the most unseen leader I've ever observed.
The fact that he's always in the background and never up in the front. He had this selfless ability to push people to the front.
Eddie is a visionary. He's everywhere. He connects with everyone. He knows everyone. And he could be doing anything that he wanted. With anyone, he could pick people to work with. But he just lower himself down and brings people to the table and just what do you have to say? I'm here to listen.
It's not that he is far away, but actually he goes down and touches the pain of people. And from there, there is always something that happens that empowers people who are touched by the presence of Eddie.
There is no doubt about the impact that he's having across the world, but there's a level of humility that is really, really, really very admirable.
The way he descended into greatness, that's what he did.
Probably used by God to accomplish as much in the last 50 years as anybody on the planet, and yet nobody knows him. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows where he lives. He doesn't have a big office. He doesn't have a secretary. He doesn't even have a title. His humility is absolutely uncommon. And that DNA, the ethos, the culture created by that kind of humility has just been transferred to generation upon generation upon generation.
He'll always lift others up. It was always about Jesus. It was never about him.
And they quite often that I question myself. Am I good enough? Do I have enough expertise? Am I fit enough? And Eddie has always said also, we believe in you.
There was one funny meeting, I think, that probably impacted me more than any other. And it might have been my second meeting with the sport movement. I was a newbie, and to be honest, I didn't know very much about sport. And I remember Eddie saying, hey, could you come to my room? I want to have a chat. He said, would you be able to lead this aspect of the sport movement? Eddie, I'm the last person that would be able to do this well. But he looked into my eyes and said, no, you can do it. You need to do it. Eddie modeled it in a quiet way. It gave other people, and it certainly gave me confidence to go, yeah, okay, I'll give it a go. I might fail. I might not know what to do, but yeah, okay, let's try this. And that's very special, and that helped me so much.
It's very rare, really anywhere, to have somebody with so much influence and so little ego. The keys to his longevity in being faithful to his mission, because it's not about him. It's about the relationships, it's about the vision and the mission.
I know myself, we're all broken. There's sinful nature in all of us. And I just love seeing leaders. And I need leaders like that finishes well.
With Eddie, I mean, it totally changed my life, totally saved my life. And Eddie was my matchmaker, so I got my wife out of the deal too. The community of relationships in the sports movement really, as part of my responsibility, something that I get to help shepherd.
You know, as I look at Eddie's life and what he's done in the ministry, I realize that he's not only a good friend to me, but he has been a good friend to many others and an unbelievable catalyst for what's taken place in the world of sports today.
That's a pretty good PR answer.
Yeah, that's right. It's a PR answer, but it's true. One of the things about sports is that, especially if you get to be, at a high level, all of a sudden you got a lot of friends. Is it because of money, or is it because of fame and glory and that sort of thing? So that's a problem that athletes have, especially at the highest level. People would see Eddie around, they say, "Who is Eddie? What's he doing? Is he your agent? Is he, is he involved in your businesses?" And I'd say, "No, he's just a friend." That made a difference, especially in winning and losing.
When we're in the tennis world and there's nothing consistent about that. You're winning and you're losing, and you're healthy and you're injured. And it's nice to have someone like Eddie around to keep it all in perspective. Eddie just kind of appeared and Eddie was around.
Eddie got to know Margie during that time I was dating her, then of course later when we got married.
Eddie was not the matchmaker, but I kind of felt he was always on my side. He always stayed in touch with me. I was the girlfriend, but I always felt that he liked me and he thought that we'd be a good pair. I can remember one tennis match at Wimbledon, sort of embarrassed to say. Stan was playing Jimmy Connors. Stan was up and he had this shot, almost would have clinched the match for him. And he missed it, and I sort of go, "You idiot!" And I'm going, "Oh no," I guess Eddie was near me, and Eddie heard me. So Eddie probably prayed a little bit more for my attitude after that.
One of the unique developments for Stan was the Adidas company wanted an American on one of their shoes. And so they went to Stan and offered him a partnership with the Stan Smith version of the tennis shoe, which became the best-selling sports shoe in the world. And as the years went by, the shoe continued, but Stan went from #1 in the world to not even playing the game. But here we are 5 decades later, and the sports shoe, most people don't even know who that person is that's pictured on 100+ million sports shoes is Stan. This is the book that Stan wrote, and this is the cover, the title that he chose himself. And I remember us talking about it, and I said, "I think that's a great title."
Yeah, these are some of my shoes up on the rack and on the floor, but they all have the same name on the back.
When I look at the relationships of Eddie's, then again, one of Jesus' characteristics, and that is incarnation. Living in others, or you can call it empathy if you wish, but I prefer the word incarnation, the spiritual word.
The relationship with Stan was a wonderful model, example for me to encourage others around the world that relationships and friendship was the most important thing, following the New Testament model. And that has been central to the sports movement. And thankfully, I've had the opportunity to see that miracle take place of a global movement becoming a reality. One of the great joys in the relationship with Stan and I is that we still are warm friends 50-some years later.
I've known Eddie 50 years. What's nice is the relationship has passed on to our next generation. Eddie's the godfather to one of our sons, and that son's married with 6 kids, and not too long ago, Eddie was there at their home, sharing with them and getting to know their kids. And I know Eddie will follow up with their 6 kids, and it continues and it keeps on going.
After 9 months of me doing the sports ministry back in my home country, it grew to the point where my government was not happy, and they arrested me on the street, put me on the plane with 2 soldiers and flew me out of my home country. As I'm in a new country, without anyone knowing where I am, a week after I got a call and I see on my cell phone unknown number. I pick up the phone and it's, "Hello, Ivan, this is Eddie." Like, how did you find me here?
And this makes me emotional. Just this great man that knows so many people all over the world. He doesn't make a difference, high or low, man or woman, rich or poor, young or old. We all feel special in the eyes of Eddie. And I want to be like him.
Last month, I got 3 days to spend with him, about 60 hours. But those were the best 60 hours of my life ever. Changed my life completely. I could listen to his heart, cried with him, learned so much from him. Never dawned to me until these 60 hours. The seriousness and the impact of that word relationships that he holds so closely.
What would you miss most about Eddie?
I'm sorry, I didn't expect this hard question. So, what will I miss? You know, my father is long gone, and Eddie is not old enough to be my father, but he's for sure old enough to be my oldest brother. It will be a hard day. It will be a hard day. At the same time, it will be a glorious day. And the reason for this is that I think Eddie has dispersed himself. Yes.
He's really set up the sports movement that if he leaves, he won't be missed. Which is an amazing aspect, is that it was never about him.
You know, some lessons of how to live my faith better. I don't think that would have happened if I hadn't gotten to know Eddie. Yeah, I've been very fortunate to, you know, that things have worked out well in many ways, and the key thing for us has been, you know, our 4 kids. We have total faith that they're going to, you know, make good decisions along the way. And you can't control that. And, you know, and you never know what's going to happen, but certainly we as parents can give a foundation to people, and that foundation has to be built upon, you know, really strong faith to be able to handle the tough times in life.
Eddie, thanks for coming. Oh. Always welcome.
Love
Take care.
it. All right. Take care now. Stay in shape.
I will.
You're my mom. Yeah, you're looking good.
This is a picture of Pat with Don and Heather, the 2 kids. And then this is a picture of all of us in our special t-shirts that Pat loved to create. Pat and I with the 2 granddaughters when they were real young, and you can see her personality. You guys are messing up my office too much. I mean, this place, oh, wait. Here's my only honor. I never wondered where this was. 1954, Boys Club, Citizen of the Year. How cool is that? That's when I was 13 years old. I never remember where this thing is. I'm so glad that it hasn't gotten lost in all of the moves, but it's a really important part of my life, of being impacted by the Boys Club, helped me through the time with my bad things in my home life, and learned a lot of skills and had somebody with ears to hear when I was in pain. I don't know who's going to take care of all these files when I'm gone.
Kyle's going to have to come in here.
I keep thinking, I'll come in each day and I'll do one thing, just 5 minutes, but over a period of a year, the second day never happens. Oh my.